The stars looked different through the observation deck windows of the new dawn. Rebecca Stone had seen countless star fields during her 20 years in space, but this view held something special. Kepler 438c hung before them like a blue-green jewel, their new home waiting just 2 days away. 50,000 colonists slept peacefully in their pods, dreaming of the farms, cities, and lives they would build on humanity's 7th colony world. Rebecca pressed her palm against the cool metal wall, feeling the gentle vibration of the ship's engines. Everything was perfect. Too perfect, she thought, but pushed the worry away. After 18 months of travel, they had faced every challenge space could throw at them. Asteroid fields, solar storms, mechanical failures, all handled with the quiet competence that made humans excellent explorers. Down in the science labs, Dr. Alan Webb worked late into the ship's night cycle. His daughter Amy slept in their quarters nearby, her drawings of their future house taped to the walls. Alan smiled as he finished his final report on the planet's atmospheric composition. The air would be breathable with minimal filtering. The soil was rich and fertile. They had found paradise. The first sign of trouble came as a ripple across the ship's sensors. Rebecca was reviewing duty rosters when Lieutenant Davis burst onto the bridge, his face pale with worry. "Captain, we have unidentified contacts approaching fast. Multiple ships, military configuration." Rebecca moved to the sensor station, her calm demeanor masking the ice forming in her stomach. The New Dawn was a colony ship, not a warship. Their weapons were designed for asteroid clearing, not ship-to-ship combat. "Hail them," she ordered. The response came immediately. The main screen flickered to life, showing a scarred reptilian face with cold yellow eyes. The creature's scales were dark red, with ritual scars covering his neck and jaw. When he spoke, his voice carried the arrogance of someone used to being feared. "Human vessel, you will surrender immediately. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. I am Commander Scar of the Crimson Talon Syndicate." Rebecca had heard of them. Pirates and terrorists who preyed on the weak across 3 star systems. They dealt in slaves, weapons, and fear. No government had been able to stop them completely. "This is a peaceful colony vessel," Rebecca replied, keeping her voice steady. "We have no quarrel with you. Allow us to continue on our way." Scar's laughter was like grinding metal. "Peaceful? How refreshing. We require half your colonists as slaves and all your technology. Your ship will serve as a fine addition to our fleet. That's not going to happen. Then you will watch your people die." The attack came without further warning. Plasma bolts struck the New Dawn's engines, sending shockwaves through the massive ship. Emergency alarms blared as the lights flickered. In the corridors, colonists stumbled and fell as artificial gravity fluctuated. Rebecca gripped her command chair as damage reports flooded in. "Engineering, what's our status?" "Engines offline, Captain. We're dead in space." Through the viewport, she watched the terrorist ships move closer like hungry sharks. Their hulls were painted in blood red with crude symbols welded to their sides. These weren't professional military vessels, they were predators. The boarding pod struck the hull with metallic thuds. Rebecca activated the ship-wide communication system, her voice echoing through every corridor and compartment. "All colonists, this is the captain. We are being boarded by hostile forces. Move to emergency shelters immediately. Security teams defend the civilian areas at all costs." But the New Dawn's security force was small, designed for crowd control and emergencies, not repelling armed boarders. The terrorists cut through the airlock seals with industrial torches, their weapons far superior to anything the colonists possessed. They moved through the ship like a plague, herding terrified families into the central cargo bay. Children cried as parents tried to shield them. Elderly colonists struggled to keep up with the rough pace set by their captors. Dr. Alan Webb had been working late when the attack began. He tried to reach his daughter's quarters but found the corridors blocked by armed terrorists. When he pushed past one of them demanding to reach his child, the alien struck him down with the butt of his weapon. "Daddy!" Amy's voice cut through the chaos as she was dragged away with a group of other children. Alan struggled to his feet, blood running down his face. "Please, she's just a little girl." Commander Scar himself had boarded the ship. The massive reptilian moved through the cargo bay where hundreds of colonists now knelt under guard. His yellow eyes studied the humans like livestock at market. "Humans," he announced, his voice amplified by speakers in his armor. "You are now property of the Crimson Talon Syndicate. The strong will serve as laborers. The weak will be sold to whoever pays best. Your captain has refused our generous offer of cooperation. He gestured to one of his soldiers, who dragged Dr. Alan Webb forward and forced him to his knees in front of the assembled colonists. Let this serve as a lesson to all who would resist us. The energy weapon's discharge was loud in the confined space. Dr. Alan Webb fell forward, his body still. Amy's screams rose above the shocked silence of the crowd, a sound that would haunt everyone who heard it. Scar looked directly into the recording device one of his soldiers held. Let this message spread across the galaxy. The Crimson Talon Syndicate claims what it wants. Humans are weak. Their governments abandon them. Their military cannot protect them. We offer them to the highest bidder. The recording would be broadcast within hours, spreading through communication networks to every civilized world. It would reach the Galactic Council chambers where diplomats would shake their heads in sympathy, but take no action. It would arrive at trading posts where other species would see confirmation that humans were not ready for the dangers of space. Most importantly, it would reach Earth. Commander Scar ordered his soldiers to begin cataloging their new property. The strongest humans would work in the mines of distant worlds. The skilled would maintain equipment in factories where safety was optional. The children would be sold to collectors who paid premium prices for exotic servants. But as the terrorists celebrated their easy victory, none of them understood what they had really done. They had not simply attacked a ship or captured slaves. They had crossed a line that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of human nature. In the depths of space, quantum communication bursts carried the news toward Earth at faster-than-light speeds. In 72 hours, the message would arrive. 50 hours after that, the response would begin. The terrorists had made a fundamental error. They assumed that because humans appeared peaceful, they were weak. They thought that because human ships seemed lightly armed, humans could not fight. They believed that because humans negotiated instead of immediately attacking, they were cowards. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, the Emergency Response Center hummed with activity that never stopped. Banks of quantum communication equipment lined the walls, processing millions of messages from across human space every second. Most were routine: shipping manifests, family communications, scientific data. Today was different. Communications Officer Lisa Martinez had been monitoring the deep space channels when the priority burst came through. The encryption was military-grade, tagged with the highest emergency codes. As she decoded the message, her hands began to shake. The video file played on her screen. She watched Commander Scar's scarred face deliver his threats. She saw the terrified colonists kneeling in the cargo bay. She witnessed Dr. Webb's execution and heard his daughter's screams. By the time the recording ended, tears ran down her face. But her expression had hardened into something cold and determined. Lisa activated the emergency protocol that had never been used in the 50 years since its creation. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in corridors as the most powerful communication array on Earth oriented itself toward the stars. Within minutes, copies of the terrorist broadcast were transmitting to every human world, every space station, every ship in the void. Earth's government received the first copy, then the military, then the major corporations. Within an hour, every human in the solar system had access to the recording. Admiral Patricia Cross was enjoying a rare, quiet evening at her home in Colorado when her emergency communicator activated. The device could only be triggered by threats to human space or direct attacks on Earth itself. She answered immediately. "Admiral, you need to see this." The recording played on her wall screen. Patricia watched in silence, her jaw tightening with each passing second. When Commander Scar executed Dr. Webb, she stood slowly from her chair. When little Amy screamed for her father, Patricia's hands clenched into fists. "Ma'am, what are your orders?" Patricia's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Activate the home guard. Full mobilization. I want every ship, every crew, every weapon we have ready for deployment within 12 hours. Admiral, that's over 200 vessels. The cost alone, do it." Across Earth, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Military bases that had been quiet for decades suddenly blazed with activity. Shipyards that built peaceful exploration vessels began loading weapons. The orbital defense platforms powered up their massive railguns for the first time in years. But the military response was only the beginning. Corporate executives who had watched their employees murdered in space made their own calls. Mining companies contributed their heavy industrial ships. Shipping corporations volunteered their fastest vessels. Private security firms offered their services free of charge. On Mars, retired Admiral George Murphy had been tending his small farm when the news reached him. He was 70 years old. With grandchildren he had never expected to see go to space. After watching the recording, he walked to his communication panel and made a call. "This is Admiral Murphy. I'm requesting immediate reactivation of my commission." "Sir, you've been retired for 15 years. "Not anymore." Similar scenes played out across human space. Veterans came out of retirement. Civilian pilots volunteered for military duty. Engineers who had designed peaceful technologies began sketching weapon upgrades. The response was not just military, it was personal. The Galactic Council chambers on Station Unity 7 had seen many crises over the centuries. Wars between species, trade disputes, territorial conflicts, but they had never seen anything like the human response to the Crimson Talon attack. Ambassador Twi'lek, a tall, blue-skinned being with centuries of diplomatic experience, watched the human fleet assembling through the station's observation windows. Ships of every size and class filled the space around Earth like an angry swarm. "This is concerning," he told his aide. "The humans are mobilizing their entire fleet over a single pirate attack. This level of response could destabilize the entire sector." His aide, a young member of the same species, consulted his datapad. "Perhaps we should offer to mediate. The Crimson Talon Syndicate has been reasonable in past negotiations." Twi'lek nodded. "Prepare a formal offer. The Council has successfully negotiated with pirates before. Surely the humans can be made to see reason." But reason was the last thing on human minds. In bars and coffee shops across Earth, people gathered around screens showing the terrorist recording. The reaction was always the same: shocked silence followed by growing anger, then demands for action. At the Space Defense Force headquarters, Admiral Cross stood before a holographic display showing the deployment of human forces. Ships that had been scattered across 3 star systems were converging like pieces of a vast machine clicking into place. "Ma'am, we're receiving volunteer offers from civilian vessels, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even private yachts. They're requesting weapon loadouts." Patricia studied the numbers. In 12 hours, humanity had assembled the largest fleet in its history. "Approve all volunteers who meet basic safety standards. Issue weapons to anyone who can use them effectively. Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting a meeting. They want to discuss mediation with the Crimson Talon Syndicate." Patricia's expression darkened. "Tell them we're not interested in mediation." "Ma'am, they're offering to negotiate the release of the hostages. Standard diplomatic protocols." "There are no standard protocols for this." Patricia turned to face her staff, her voice carrying across the command center. "The terrorists made a fundamental error. They assumed that because we prefer peace, we're incapable of war. They thought that because we negotiate first, we're weak. They believed that because we haven't shown our full military capabilities, we don't have them." She gestured toward the holographic display where red dots represented human ships moving through space. "They're about to learn that human restraint is not the same as human weakness." The fleet that departed Earth's solar system 3 days after the attack was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Military vessels bristled with weapons that most species didn't know humans possessed. Civilian ships had been converted into support vessels, their cargo holds filled with supplies and ammunition. But it wasn't just the size of the fleet that was remarkable. It was the unity of purpose. Every human involved, from the youngest crewman to the most experienced admiral, shared the same goal. Not negotiation, not diplomacy, not a show of force to encourage surrender. Complete and total destruction of the Crimson Talon Syndicate. As the fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, heading toward the last known coordinates of the terrorist organization, communication networks across human space carried a simple message. It appeared on news broadcasts, government announcements, and personal communications. To anyone who would harm innocent humans, "We are coming. We do not negotiate with terrorists. We do not show mercy to those who show none. We do not forget our dead, and we do not forgive their killers." The message spread beyond human space, reaching alien governments and criminal organizations throughout the galaxy. Most dismissed it as typical human emotion, loud threats that would fade when the reality of conflict set in. They were about to discover how wrong they were. The Crimson Talon Syndicate had operated in the Outer Rim for over 2 centuries. building a network that spanned 3-star systems. They maintained safe houses on a dozen worlds, supply depots hidden in asteroid fields, and informants in every major trading hub. No government had ever seriously threatened their operations because the cost of hunting them down always exceeded the political will to do so. Humans were about to change that calculation forever. The first strike came without warning. On a remote trading station called Havens Rest, the facility had served as a major supply point for the Crimson Talon, where stolen goods were laundered and new recruits were trained. The station's administrator, a corrupt alien named Voss, had grown wealthy by looking the other way when terrorist ships docked. Voss was reviewing the morning's trading reports when his security chief burst into his office, forearms gesticulating wildly in panic. "Sir, we have incoming human vessels. They're not responding to communication attempts." "How many ships?" 12 military configuration. Voss felt his stomach sink. 12 human warships was more firepower than most governments could deploy. What were they doing at a small trading station? The answer came in the form of a tight beam transmission that overrode every communication channel on the station. "This is Captain Williams of the Human Defense Force. Havens Rest has been identified as a Crimson Talon supply facility. You have 10 minutes to evacuate all personnel. This station will be destroyed." Voss activated his emergency communicator, trying to reach his contacts in the syndicate. "This is Havens Rest! The humans are here. They're going to destroy the station." The response came from a Crimson Talon lieutenant hiding in the asteroid fields. "Impossible. Humans don't attack civilian facilities. They follow galactic law. Tell that to the warships pointing guns at my station." But Voss was already running toward the escape pods along with hundreds of other station personnel. Behind them, the massive trading complex that had taken decades to build was reduced to scrap metal in under an hour. Human ships used precision strikes to destroy every structure while carefully avoiding the fleeing escape pods. The attack on Havens Rest was just the beginning. Across 3-star systems, human forces moved with methodical precision. They had spent the journey from Earth studying every piece of intelligence about the Crimson Talon Syndicate, mapping their network, identifying their resources. On the mining world of Helios Prime, a Crimson Talon recruitment center operated under the cover of a legitimate employment agency. Young aliens down on their luck were offered exciting opportunities in deep space mining, only to find themselves enslaved on prison asteroids. The center's director, a smooth-talking being named Core, was conducting an interview with a desperate young alien when human Marines kicked down his door. They moved through the building with brutal efficiency, arresting everyone connected to the operation and freeing the aliens who had been tricked into indentured servitude. Core found himself face-to-face with a human soldier whose armor bore fresh scorch marks from recent combat. "Please, I'm just a legitimate businessman. I have rights under galactic law." The Marine's response was delivered in a flat, emotionless tone. "The beings you sold into slavery had rights too." Within 48 hours, the Crimson Talon Syndicate's carefully built network began collapsing. Supply lines were cut, safe houses were raided, informants were arrested or fled. What had taken 2 centuries to build was being dismantled in a matter of days. But the humans weren't just destroying infrastructure, they were gathering intelligence. Every computer core they captured was analyzed. Every prisoner was interrogated. Every document was studied. The human fleet was learning everything about how the Crimson Talon operated, who supported them, and where they might run. Commander Scar himself was hiding on a heavily fortified asteroid base called the Iron Fang when news of the human attacks reached him. The base had never been successfully assaulted in over a century of operation. Its location was secret, its defenses formidable, its garrison loyal. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across our territory. The humans have hit every major facility. Our network is in ruins." Scar studied the tactical display. His scarred face twisted in confusion and growing fear. Red symbols showed failed communications with dozens of facilities. The humans weren't just targeting major installations. They were hitting everything connected to the Syndicate, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. How did they map our entire network so quickly? His intelligence chief, a cybernetic enhanced alien named Nexus, worked frantically at his computer terminals. They must have been watching us for years, building detailed files. The precision of their attack suggests complete intelligence penetration, In reality, the humans had accomplished in days what would have taken other species years. They had used advanced artificial intelligence to analyze patterns in shipping records, communication logs, and financial transactions. Technology that most of the galaxy considered purely theoretical was being deployed with devastating effectiveness. The breakthrough came when human forces captured a Crimson Talon communications officer on a supply run. Under interrogation, the terrified alien revealed the location of 3 major bases, including the Iron Fang. Admiral Cross received the intelligence report, while her flagship moved through hyperspace toward the Syndicate's territory. The bridge crew worked quietly around her, their faces set in expressions of grim determination. "Ma'am, we have the locations of their primary strongholds. Intelligence suggests the hostages from the New Dawn are being held at the Iron Fang base. What's the garrison strength?" "Approximately 5,000 armed terrorists plus support staff. The base is built into a large asteroid with multiple defensive positions." Admiral Cross studied the tactical data. The Iron Fang was designed to withstand assault by conventional forces. Its builders had assumed that any attacking fleet would need to preserve the base to rescue hostages, limiting their tactical options. They're about to learn that humans don't think like other species. The psychological warfare had already begun. Human ships broadcast continuous messages on all frequencies, ensuring that every terrorist in the system could hear them. "Members of the Crimson Talon Syndicate, this is Admiral Cross of the Human Defense Force. You have murdered innocent civilians. You have taken hostages. You have declared war on humanity. We are coming for you. Surrender will not be accepted. Mercy will not be shown. You will answer for your crimes." The messages played on repeat 24 hours a day in multiple languages. They were designed to create fear, uncertainty, and despair among the terrorist ranks. On smaller bases throughout the system, Crimson Talon members began deserting in large numbers. Some tried to flee in small ships only to be intercepted by human patrols. Others attempted to surrender but found their offers rejected. "Sir, we're picking up transmission from a Crimson Talon vessel. They're offering to surrender and provide intelligence in exchange for clemency." Admiral Cross didn't look up from her tactical displays. "Tell them to save their breath, ma'am. They might have valuable information about. They made their choice when they murdered Dr. Webb. They'll face the consequences." The hunt was methodical, relentless, and absolutely thorough. Human forces moved through the system like an unstoppable force of nature, dismantling everything connected to the Crimson Talon Syndicate. They showed the same precision and dedication that had built humanity's spacefaring civilization, but directed toward destruction instead of creation. Other criminal organizations throughout the galaxy watched the systematic dismantling of the Crimson Talon with growing alarm. The terrorists had been one of the most powerful and well-connected syndicates in known space. If humans could destroy them so easily, no criminal group was safe. Emergency meetings were called in hidden bases across the galaxy. Crime bosses who had operated for decades without serious threat suddenly found themselves reconsidering any operations that might involve human targets. The message was clear. Humanity had declared war on terrorism itself, and they possessed both the capability and the will to wage that war with unprecedented ruthlessness. The Iron Fang asteroid base hung in space like a metallic tumor, its surface bristling with weapon turrets and sensor arrays. For over a century, it had served as the primary stronghold of the Crimson Talon Syndicate, carved deep into a massive asteroid that provided both protection and concealment. No attacking force had ever successfully breached its defenses. Commander Scar stood in the base's command center, watching his tactical displays with growing dread. The human fleet had arrived 6 hours ago, taking position around the asteroid in a perfect sphere of destruction. Over 100 ships of various classes surrounded his fortress, their weapons trained on every possible escape route. "Sir, the humans are maintaining their positions at optimal firing range. They haven't attempted to close for assault." Scar studied the display, his scarred face twisted in confusion. The human formation was unlike anything he had seen before. Most attacking forces would probe for weaknesses, test defenses, attempt to find the best approach for assault. The humans simply sat there waiting. "Have they made any demands?" "No, sir. They haven't attempted communication since their arrival." The silence was more unnerving than threats would have been. Scar had faced many enemies over his long career as a terrorist leader. Some had raged and threatened. Others had tried negotiation and bribery. The humans just watched and waited like predators studying their prey. The first sign of human intentions came 12 hours into the siege. Construction ships began moving through the fleet, their massive cargo holds disgorging raw materials into the void. Within hours, automated construction drones were assembling something enormous in the space. Between the human fleet and the asteroid base, Dr. Emma Foster watched the construction from the science station aboard Admiral Cross's flagship. As a specialist in rapid space construction, she had been called in to oversee what the military was calling Project Hammerblow. Admiral, the siege platform's primary structure is complete. We'll have full weapons integration within 18 hours. Admiral Cross nodded, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. What's the power output? Approximately 50 times the firepower of our most powerful warship. The platform will be capable of systematic dismantling of the entire asteroid. The siege platform grew before the terrified eyes of the Crimson Talon defenders. Humans had taken the raw materials from mining ships, cargo vessels, and their own supply stores to build a weapon of unprecedented scale. The construction showed a level of engineering capability that stunned observers throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Twi'lek watched the construction from the bridge of a Galactic Council observation vessel, maintaining what they claimed was a safe distance from the conflict. "This is madness," he told his aide. "The humans are building a siege engine in open space. The energy requirements alone should be impossible." "Sir, our analysts believe the human fleet is sharing power through some kind of distributed network. Each ship is contributing to the platform's energy grid." Twi'lek felt a chill run through his blue-skinned body. The level of coordination and technology the humans were displaying was far beyond what the galaxy had believed possible. How had they hidden such capabilities? On the Iron Fang, desperation was setting in among the terrorist leadership. Scar had called an emergency meeting of his senior commanders, but the conference room felt more like a funeral parlor. "Options," Scar demanded. His second-in-command, a cybernetic being named Rex, consulted his data displays. "We could attempt a breakout using the hostages as shields, load them onto ships and try to fight our way out. The humans haven't shown any concern for collateral damage so far. We could try negotiating through the Galactic Council. They have representatives nearby." Scar's laughter was bitter. "The humans have ignored every diplomatic overture. They're not interested in negotiation." The reality was sinking in among the terrorist leadership. They had made the mistake of believing their own propaganda about human weakness. The beings they had dismissed as soft and civilized were proving to be the most implacable enemy they had ever faced. The breaking point came when the humans demonstrated the siege platform's capabilities. A small asteroid near the Iron Fang, approximately 1/10 the size of the main base, was targeted for a test firing. The energy discharge was visible across several star systems. The asteroid simply ceased to exist, converted to constituent atoms in a matter of seconds. The demonstration sent shockwaves through both the terrorist base and the watching galaxy. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the humans." Scar straightened in his command chair. Finally, perhaps they were ready to negotiate. Admiral Cross's image appeared on the main screen, her expression cold and emotionless. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship hummed with quiet efficiency. "Commander Scar of the Crimson Talon Syndicate, you have 48 hours to release all hostages and surrender unconditionally for trial and execution. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of terms. Admiral, surely we can reach some arrangement. I have valuable information about other criminal organizations. I can provide." Cross cut him off with a gesture. "You have 47 hours and 59 minutes. The transmission ended, leaving Scar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his senior staff looked like beings facing their own death sentences. "Sir, perhaps we should consider their terms. Surrender means death. Fighting means death. Running means death." Scar's voice was hollow. "The humans aren't offering us choices. They're offering us different ways to die." But Scar had not survived decades as a terrorist leader by accepting defeat easily. If the humans wanted to play a waiting game, he would force their hand. He activated the communication system to address the human fleet directly. "Human Admiral, I have 500 of your people aboard this base. Innocent colonists from your ship, including children. Attack this base and they die with us." The response came within minutes. Admiral Cross's voice was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every being in the system could hear her words. "Commander Scar, you appear to be under the impression that threatening innocent lives will deter us. You are mistaken. We will recover our people. You will answer for your crimes. The order of these events is the only variable. On the Iron Fang, the systematic psychological pressure was beginning to show results. Terrorist troops began deserting their posts. Some attempted to escape in small ships only to be destroyed by human patrols. Others simply laid down their weapons and waited for the inevitable. Scar tried one final desperate gambit. He had 10 colonists brought to the main communications center and ordered his troops to execute them in full view of the human fleet. Stop the construction of your weapon, or I will kill every human aboard this base. The execution was broadcast live to the human fleet. Admiral Cross watched from her command chair as innocent people died, her expression never changing. When the transmission ended, she activated the fleet communication system. All ships prepare for immediate assault. Execute Operation Thunderbolt. The siege platform's weapons charged to full power, but this was not going to be a simple bombardment. The humans had spent days studying the asteroid's structure, mapping every corridor and chamber using advanced sensors. They knew exactly where the hostages were being held, and they were coming to get them. The final assault on the Iron Fang would demonstrate to the galaxy that humans had not simply become capable warriors. They had become something far more dangerous. They had become beings who would stop at nothing to protect their own and punish those who harmed innocents. The siege had lasted long enough. Now came the reckoning. The assault on the Iron Fang began at exactly 600 hours ship time. The siege platform's massive energy projectors fired with surgical precision, carving through the asteroid's outer defenses like a scalpel through flesh. Each shot was carefully calculated to destroy weapon positions and defensive systems while avoiding the areas where sensors had detected human life signs. Commander, Scar watched helplessly as his fortress's defenses crumbled under the relentless bombardment. Weapon turrets that had protected the base for over a century were reduced to molten metal in seconds. Shield generators that had withstood decades of attacks overloaded and exploded. Within 20 minutes, the Iron Fang's exterior defenses had been completely neutralized. Sir, they're not targeting the main structure. They're being selective. Scar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. The humans weren't trying to destroy the base. They were systematically dismantling its ability to resist while preserving the internal structure where the hostages were held. The level of precision required was staggering. How is this possible? No species has this kind of surgical strike capability. His science officer, a trembling alien named Flux, worked frantically at his instruments. Sir, their targeting computers are somehow mapping our internal structure in real time. They know exactly where everything is located. The answer lay in technology that most of the galaxy considered theoretical. Human quantum sensors could penetrate solid matter and create three-dimensional maps of internal structures. Combined with artificial intelligence that could process millions of calculations per second, the humans knew the location of every terrorist, every hostage, and every structural weak point in the asteroid. The bombardment ceased as suddenly as it had begun. In the sudden silence that followed, Scar could hear the sound of his own breathing and the panicked whispers of his remaining troops. Then came a new sound, the distinctive hiss of cutting tools as human assault pods burned through the asteroid's outer hull. Captain Maria Santos led the first wave of human Marines through the breach points. Her armor was equipped with sensors that showed the real-time location of every life form in the base, with hostages marked in blue and terrorists marked in red. The mission parameters were simple: rescue all hostages, eliminate all terrorists. The Marines moved through the asteroid's corridors with deadly efficiency. They had studied the base's layout for days, memorizing every passage and chamber. Each team knew exactly where they were going and what they would find when they got there. The first group of hostages was located in what had once been a storage bay near the base's outer rim. 37 colonists from the New Dawn sat huddled together, guarded by 6 heavily armed terrorists. The guards never had a chance to react. Human Marines appeared at multiple entry points simultaneously, their weapons firing with lethal precision. Hostages secure in Section 7, Captain Santos reported. No casualties among the civilians. Similar scenes played out throughout the asteroid as human forces moved deeper into the base. The terrorists, already demoralized by the siege, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to anticipate their every move. Attempts to use hostages as human shields failed as Marines used non-lethal weapons to incapacitate terrorists while avoiding harm to civilians. In the central command center, Commander Scar made his final stand with his most loyal followers. He had gathered the remaining leadership of the Crimson Talon Syndicate, determined to make the humans pay dearly for their victory. Sir, human forces are approaching the command center. They've neutralized every defensive position between here and the outer hull. Scar checked his weapon, a high-energy plasma rifle that had served him well in dozens of battles. Then we die here fighting. But death was not going to be that simple. The humans had special plans for the terrorist leadership. The attack on the command center came from 6 directions at once. Walls exploded inward as human marines used shaped charges to create their own entrances. The battle that followed was brief and completely one-sided. Terrorist weapons that had seemed formidable against helpless civilians proved inadequate against military armor and superior tactics. Scar found himself on his knees, his weapon destroyed, his body riddled with non-lethal stun charges that left him conscious but paralyzed. Around him, the surviving terrorist leadership lay in similar conditions. The humans had deliberately avoided killing them. Captain Santos stood over the defeated terrorist commander, her helmet's visor reflecting the emergency lighting of the ruined command center. Commander Scar, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity, including murder, kidnapping, and terrorism. Kill me and be done with it, Scar gasped through the pain of the stun charges. Death would be too easy. You're going to face trial. The rescue of the hostages was completed within 4 hours of the assault's beginning. Every single colonist from the New Dawn was recovered alive, along with dozens of other beings who had been held captive by the Crimson Talon Syndicate. The operation was executed with a precision that amazed military observers throughout the galaxy. Little Amy Webb was found in a holding cell deep within the asteroid, clutching a small drawing of her father that she had somehow managed to keep during her captivity. When the Marines reached her, she looked up with eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. Are you here to take me home? The Marine who found her, a grizzled veteran named Rodriguez, knelt down to her level. Yes, little one. We're taking you home. But the human operation was far from complete. Throughout the asteroid base, Marines methodically searched every chamber, every corridor, every hiding place. No terrorist was allowed to escape. Those who surrendered were taken prisoner. Those who resisted were eliminated. The trial of the terrorist leadership began immediately aboard Admiral Cross's flagship. The humans had brought military judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys with the fleet. There would be no delay, no appeals to galactic courts, no diplomatic intervention. Commander Scar found himself in a sterile courtroom that had been hastily constructed in one of the ship's cargo bays. The proceedings were broadcast live throughout human space, and to any alien government that wished to observe. How do you plead to the charges of murder in the first degree, kidnapping, and terrorism? Scar's lawyer, a human officer assigned to ensure the proceedings met legal standards, had advised him to plead guilty in exchange for life imprisonment, but the terrorist commander's pride would not allow such submission. I plead not guilty. I am a warrior fighting for my people's freedom. The prosecutor, Admiral Patricia Cross herself, stood to address the court. The defendant has admitted on camera to executing innocent civilians. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The trial lasted 6 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all charges. The sentence was death by execution, to be carried out immediately. Do you have any final words? The judge asked. Scar looked directly into the camera that was broadcasting the proceedings across the galaxy. I regret nothing. The Crimson Talon Syndicate will rise again. Admiral Cross stepped forward, her expression unchanged. No, it won't. The execution was carried out by energy weapon in the ship's cargo bay, witnessed by representatives from a dozen alien governments who had been invited to observe. The message was clear. This was what happened to those who murdered innocent humans. But Scar's death was only the beginning. Every member of the Crimson Talon Syndicate who had been captured faced the same military tribunal. Those who had been directly involved in murder or torture were executed. Those who had served in support roles received life imprisonment. No exceptions were made. No mercy was shown. The trials continued for weeks as human forces tracked down every remaining member of the terrorist organization. Some tried to flee to distant star systems, only to be hunted down by human ships that seemed to appear everywhere at once. Others attempted to hide among civilian populations, but human intelligence networks found them with disturbing efficiency. Within 3 months, The Crimson Talon Syndicate ceased to exist. Not defeated, not scattered, not driven underground, completely and utterly destroyed. Every member was either dead or in human custody. Every asset was seized. Every safe house was burned. Every ally was warned that association with the organization meant death. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity demonstrated a capability for total warfare that no one had suspected. The beings who had seemed so peaceful, so willing to negotiate, so committed to diplomatic solutions, had revealed themselves to be capable of absolute ruthlessness when their people were threatened. In government chambers across known space, the implications were discussed in worried whispers. If humans could destroy the Crimson Talon Syndicate so completely, what else were they capable of? What other capabilities had they hidden behind their peaceful facade? The answer would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. 6 months after the destruction of the Crimson Talon Syndicate, the galaxy was still adjusting to its new reality. In the criminal underworld, the very mention of humans was enough to end conversations and clear rooms. Criminal organizations that had operated freely for centuries now avoided any activity that might attract human attention. The Galactic Council chambers on Unity 7 station had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Representatives from over 50 species had gathered to discuss what they were quietly calling the human problem. The beings who had once been dismissed as naive newcomers to galactic politics were now viewed as the most dangerous military force in known space. Ambassador Twi'lek stood before the assembled delegates, his blue skin pale with stress. As the Council's chief diplomat, he had been tasked with addressing the crisis that humanity's actions had created. Fellow delegates, we must address the fundamental change in galactic balance that recent events have created. The human response to the terrorist attack has demonstrated capabilities that were previously unknown. A representative from the trade-focused Merchant Guild raised one of his forearms. Unknown? They built a siege weapon in open space in less than a day. Where did they acquire such technology? More importantly, added the delegate from the warrior caste worlds, how did they hide it from us? Our intelligence services detected no evidence of advanced military capabilities. The answer to that question was sitting in classified files across human space. For decades, while publicly promoting peaceful exploration and trade, humanity had been quietly developing military technologies that far exceeded anything the galaxy had seen. The assumption that humans were technologically inferior had been carefully cultivated and deliberately maintained. Dr. Emma Foster, now serving as humanity's chief scientific representative to the Council, listened to the alien concerns with barely concealed amusement. The beings who had patronized humans for years were now terrified of them. The technology we employed against the terrorists has been available for some time, she said calmly. We simply saw no need to advertise our capabilities. But the precision of your attacks, the coordination of your fleet, the construction capabilities, these represent advances beyond anything we've achieved. Emma shrugged. Human ingenuity has always been underestimated. Perhaps that's why the Crimson Talon Syndicate made the mistake of targeting our civilians. On Earth, the mood was entirely different. The successful rescue of the New Dawn colonists and the complete destruction of their captors had united humanity in a way that nothing else had achieved. Public support for the military response had been overwhelming, with approval ratings reaching levels not seen since the early days of space exploration. President Sarah Williams stood in the Oval Office, reviewing reports from across human space. The colony ship New Dawn had been repaired and was now orbiting Kepler 438c, where the colonists were finally establishing their new home. But the colony would be different from what had originally been planned. Ma'am, the colonists have requested permission to name their settlement in honor of Dr. Webb. The president nodded. Approved. What about security arrangements? The colonists have requested a permanent military presence. They never want to be defenseless again. This was the new reality across human space. Colony worlds that had once relied on minimal security forces were now requesting full military garrisons. Trading ships that had once traveled unarmed now bristled with weapons. The peaceful expansion of humanity into the galaxy had been replaced by something more aggressive and determined. Admiral Patricia Cross stood on the observation deck of her flagship, watching as the last of the human fleet returned to Earth orbit. The mission had been a complete success by any measure. Every hostage had been rescued, every terrorist had been eliminated, and humanity's military capabilities had been clearly demonstrated to the galaxy. But the Admiral understood that the real impact of their actions was just beginning to be felt. Intelligence reports from across known space painted a picture of a criminal underworld in complete disarray. Organizations that had operated for centuries were dissolving overnight as their members fled to avoid human attention. Admiral, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Outer Rim. The Skull Nebula pirates are requesting a meeting. Patricia turned from the viewport, her expression curious. The Skull Nebula pirates were one of the oldest and most powerful criminal organizations in the galaxy, operating in territory that no government had ever successfully policed. What do they want? They're offering to surrender, ma'am. Complete surrender. They want to negotiate terms for the dissolution of their organization. This was happening across the galaxy. Criminal groups that had never feared any government were now terrified of attracting human attention. The complete destruction of the Crimson Talon Syndicate had sent a message that was impossible to ignore. Humans did not negotiate with terrorists. They eliminated them. Little Amy Webb stood in the garden of her new home on Kepler 438c, holding a small flower that she had picked near her father's memorial. The settlement around her was bustling with activity, as 50,000 colonists worked to build their new lives. But this colony was different from the peaceful farming community that had originally been planned. Guard towers watched the perimeter. Orbital defense platforms protected the skies. Military patrols secured the surrounding territory. The colonists had learned that peace required strength, and they would never again trust their safety to the good intentions of others. Amy looked up at the sky where human warships traced bright lines against the stars. She was too young to understand the complex political changes that her father's death had triggered, but she understood one simple truth. No one would ever again be allowed to hurt her people without facing the full fury of human retaliation. In the criminal underworld, the name Amy Webb had become a symbol, not of innocent victimhood, but of the consequences of harming humans. Her father's execution had triggered a response that reshaped the galaxy's understanding of human nature. His death had been avenged not just by the destruction of his killers, but by the elimination of the entire organization that had threatened her. The Galactic Council's attempts to mediate and negotiate had been ignored. Their offers to broker peace deals had been rejected. Their traditional diplomatic solutions had been rendered irrelevant by humanity's absolute refusal to compromise with terrorists. Ambassador Twi'lek found himself in the uncomfortable position of trying to explain to other species why humans were different. In his private quarters, he reviewed recordings of human literature, history, and philosophy, trying to understand the mindset that had led to such an extreme response. "Sir, the human delegate is requesting another meeting with the Council." Twi'lek sighed. "What do they want this time?" "They're offering to share their anti-terrorism expertise with other species, provided those species agree to adopt human standards for dealing with terrorist organizations." The implications were staggering. Humans were essentially offering to export their methods across the galaxy, creating a unified front against terrorism that would adopt their policy of no negotiation, no mercy, and complete elimination of threats. Some species would undoubtedly resist, clinging to traditional diplomatic approaches, but others, particularly those that had suffered from terrorist attacks in the past, were already expressing interest in human methods. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was driving that change through demonstrated capability, rather than diplomatic pressure. They had shown that they possessed both the technology and the will to completely eliminate threats to their people. Other species could choose to adapt to this new reality, or continue suffering from criminal organizations that humans would no longer tolerate. In the depths of space, where criminal organizations had once operated with impunity, a new fear had taken hold. Ships changed course to avoid systems with human presence. Criminal leaders disbanded their organizations rather than risk human attention. The vast network of corruption and violence that had plagued the galaxy for centuries was crumbling under the weight of human resolve. The warning had been delivered and received. Humans do not settle with terrorists. They eliminate them completely, along with anyone who supports them, harbors them, or profits from their activities. The galaxy had learned to fear human anger, but more importantly, It had learned to respect human determination. The species that had seemed so peaceful and accommodating had revealed themselves to be capable of absolute ruthlessness when their people were threatened. In the years that followed, this lesson would be remembered whenever anyone considered targeting human civilians. The price of such actions had been clearly established, and it was a price that no rational being would choose to pay. Humanity had claimed its place in the galaxy not through conquest or aggression, but through the absolute protection of its own people and the complete elimination of those who would harm them. It was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come.